Hi, and welcome everyone. I'm Christine Fisher, your host of Cape and ARTWaves. I've hit the pause button this summer. I've taken a couple of months off, and it feels great to be back kicking up the program again for our fall season. Honestly, it feels a little bit surreal, though, I got to admit. Our program is coming to you by way of 1623 Studios Media, located in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I co-produce the show with Jacqueline Gatum DeFalco, who will be joining you as your host next time. We're so grateful to our growing listener community. We have approximately 13,000 listeners out there, and we're ever so grateful. We're equally grateful to our sponsors. We can't do the show without them. They are Prince Insurance Agency, M.K. Fisher, visual artist Martha K. Andrew of Compass Real Estate Brokerage, Protective Packaging, Cape Ann Savings Bank, and Common Crow. Thank you. On the marketing side of things, we want to also acknowledge our partner, CARTS, for doing such a terrific job getting the word out. They profile our featured guest each week in their online newsletter, and 1623 Studios Media, who broadcast and distribute our show. We also want to thank local musicians Steve Lacey and Pat Verga for their contribution of the original music. Our program is all about bringing forward our area artists and makers, giving them a platform to share their artistic journey and their work. And today I'm thrilled to welcome the irrepressible Brenda Malloy. Spirit forward, living and creating in the moment, Brenda's approach to life and art comes from a place of love and trust, which translates to everything, her life choices, to how she runs her gallery Imagine, located on RNAC, where she sells her collages, paintings, and beautiful painted clothing. It is Brenda's philosophy, her global adventures, her enterprising spirit, which have informed who she is today, how she lives, and her artistic expression. I'm showing this terrific image of Brenda behind me, which is courtesy of Louise Welch. And I think it speaks volumes about Brenda and her spirit. Her presence is very much part of the Rocky Neck Art Colony and the Cape Ann cultural community. She currently serves on the board of the Rocky Neck Art Colony, representing the artist community, their voice, and has been deeply involved since the very beginning, before the Art Colony even had a board. All right. I want to welcome Brenda.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
It's great to have you here. I'm thrilled. So get us started. You grew up here in Lincoln, of all places, Lincoln, Massachusetts. You summered in Gloucester. Kick up your background for us.
So, well, I had decided in high school that I wanted to be a commercial airline pilot, and went to a flight college up in New Hampshire, and soon realized that I'd be incredibly bored as an airplane pilot. So stopped flying after I got my private pilot's license. And then they started a helicopter training program, which totally caught all of my interest. And so I was a commercial helicopter pilot for 12 years. I had 2 charter companies, and I had a flight training school. And after doing that, I decided to live in a van for 3.5 years by choice, traveling around the United States, did a couple of flying gigs during that 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. And when I decided that I wanted to settle down someplace, Gloucester was really the only place that I could imagine wanting to be, because I had loved it ever since childhood, summering here.
I love it. So I'm going to back you up for a minute, because we have this fabulous image that I want to show everybody of you at the controls of your helicopter. And my God, it's quite the image. And, I want to ask you, and I'm sure our listeners want to know too, how does a gal go from growing up in Lincoln, Massachusetts, fairly tame, right? To forging this career flying? I mean, did you have role models? Did you have somebody in your family who inspired you? I mean, what was your impetus here for pursuing this path?
Well, I had always loved going to Bedford Airport, which was only about 15 minutes from my home. And I was enthralled with watching the airplanes take off and land.
Okay.
And so I don't know, it just really struck me probably when I was a junior in high school that was what I wanted to do for a career.
I love it because I think at that time there were not that many female pilots.
No, not many at all.
There you go, blazing a path, just as you have ever since, right? I just love it. Okay, and during that time, if I remember correctly, according to our pre-conversation, were you also wintering in Thailand and Nepal?
I started wintering.
Or did that come later?
That came later. When I moved to Gloucester in '96,
yeah,
it was 4 years later that I started my travels over to Asia, and I spent 11 months there. The first year and a half or so that I traveled. Mm-hmm. And it was shortly after that that I was walking around Rocky Neck one day after having breakfast at Sailor Stan's, mm-hmm. and saw a sign in the front window of what's now my gallery and living space. Mm-hmm. And it said gallery living space for rent 2002 season. And at that time I didn't paint, but I thought, well, I'll just bring things back from my Asian travels and open up a shop. And John Nesta next door encouraged me, and he said, sell the things from Asia and you'll eventually start painting. And he was absolutely right.
From the sage, right?
Yeah.
So we have a wonderful image. I'm going to let you explain it, but you started out when you had Imagine, if I remember correctly, creating these beautiful greeting cards.
Yes, I had actually been making greeting cards when I first moved to Gloucester. I supported myself solely on my greeting cards. I had sales reps across the country, and went for the first 5 years that I was open, the only thing I made in Imagine were the greeting cards, mm-hmm. which I absolutely love because I just feel like they convey such a beautiful message. And I know when people receive them, they're really meaningful.
Yeah.
And I think they're my favorite thing out of everything that I create.
Well, they're really stunning, having just recently been into your gallery, and your messaging and your handwriting is just, all part of it too, Brenda. It's very elegant, really beautiful. And your mom, if I remember correctly, just connecting the dots, your mother also made greeting cards, right? Growing up.
Yeah. She always encouraged us to write thank you notes for everything anybody ever gave us. And we always made homemade cards for people. And I think that's probably really when it started.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great. So you've been in your van, you land on this fabulous opportunity to scoop up Imagine, where you've been ever since. And we have two images. We've got an outdoor image that I really enjoy. And we can see some of your beautiful work there on your front lawn. Anything that you want to say about that in particular?
Well, I just feel really fortunate to not only have this space, to have my gallery and my living space behind it. It is my only home. But to have the front yard as such a really welcoming spot for people. People are invited to sit on the front lawn. I share it with total strangers often and commune with family and friends there. And it's just a really beautiful, loving, colorful, peaceful place that I get feedback on almost every day. How much people enjoy being able to sit there.
Yeah, well, I felt it just as I was, walking in to see you just recently. We've got another wonderful image, and this is a painting of clothing that you're doing outside. And I just love how these textiles are just kind of blowing in the wind, and your free-flowing expression of your paint on fabric. I mean, it's really terrific. And I would imagine just painting right there also attracts people to wanting to learn more, and is very much an invitation for them to come in and explore your gallery.
Yeah, people really appreciate seeing the process. My front yard really is the space that I use to create all my works, the textiles, the paintings, the cards, the magnets. And people do appreciate watching the process. And I'm not someone who's inhibited or slowed down by having people stop and ask questions or talk, because I'm just kind of in the flow. I don't need a lot of concentration for what I do, and I really enjoy the public. So it's a nice feedback loop between me doing what I do and seeing what people appreciate. And often I'll sell stuff off the front lawn that isn't even heat set yet, but people take it, and I tell them what they do to heat set it because they don't want to wait for the process to be finished, and I'm happy for them to take it away, so I let them.
I love it. As we said earlier, we love to sell work, right? Let's talk a little bit more about your philosophy, because your philosophy, you're so true to your philosophy. I really admire that about you.
Well, I feel very fortunate to basically have a bottomless well of positivity and joy. And, I have my moments like everybody, but in general, I wake up every day grateful. Gratitude's really my spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very trusting of people. I really believe that if you want what you have, you'll always have what you want. And in fact, I share that with a lot of the kids that come into the gallery that are looking and want to buy something. And I'll say to them, you don't have to buy anything. You can look and enjoy it, and I'll say to them, the more you spend, the more you have to earn. So, take that to heart. I've created a life where I don't buy much and I don't have to earn much. And yet I have more than any other human being that I know as far as quality of life. And I really believe that everything comes from either fear or love, and that we've got to really feed the love as a practice every day, because it's easy to get caught up in the fear. And I believe in trusting people.
Yeah, I love it. Do you feel that your years spent in Nepal and in Thailand and just your travels in general, but particularly to that part of the world, do you feel that that has had a strong influence on helping to shape your philosophy?
I think that's definitely part of it. I mean, I've spent over 60 months in Buddhist countries in the last 23 years or so. Mm-hmm. And just witnessing how they conduct themselves and what their belief system is. I don't consider myself a Buddhist, but I certainly study that through witnessing the people and some of the readings, and to really appreciate that they believe that you get what you give. And I have found that to be really exceptionally true in my life and the way I live it. Mm-hmm. And when I lived in the van, it was a little minivan. It was me traveling by myself, although I did have a big German Shepherd. But I pretty much went anywhere and slept anywhere. Most of the time I slept outside on the ground. I didn't stay in the van because it was too small. And I really went around with trust in my heart. And in all my travels alone and in all my time in the van, I've really never had anything even close to bad happening to me.
Isn't that fabulous? That is so, so great. Because there's a certain element of risk there that obviously you're comfortable with, and also has propelled you forward, has propelled you to do what you do, really, right? I mean, you knew the timing was right when you scooped up Imagine. And I can't help but think that your earlier career, even as a helicopter pilot and your flight schools and chartering company, it's and your comfort traveling the world by yourself. I mean, it just all informs, I think, where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not a big one on fear. When they say there's nothing to fear but fear itself, I believe that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love it, Brenda. I think it's great. We all can learn from you, honestly. I want you to talk to this wonderful image that you have that bridges beautifully on this discussion around philosophy. This is of the basket that's in your gallery. Talk to us about this.
Well, I learned very early on when I opened Imagine that I'm not someone who's interested nor capable in sitting in a retail shop or in a gallery day after day for long hours. I'm a very free spirit. I need to have freedom to do what I want when I want at the drop of a dime. So I bought the basket, I think at second glance, and spray painted it and made it into a self-serve basket. And I literally leave my shop open, sometimes for literally days at a time. And the shop's on self-serve. There's very brief instructions for people on what to do. I've also never taken credit cards except for the first year I was open, because I can't support those corporations. Mm-hmm. So until last year, I literally issued paper IOUs, and people would send me checks when they got home. And I would do that for thousands of dollars worth of merchandise every year, and people always paid. So it's exciting when I meet people who've been coming in for 10 or 15 years, and they'll say, oh my God, we've been coming here for years and buying stuff through self-serve, and we've never met you because you haven't been here. Well, I am here most of the time, but I also give myself the freedom to go paddling and rowing and dancing and biking and walking. And people love the self-serve concept, that their response to it is wonderful. And that I love showing the children that you can trust people. I mean, I literally trust people to pay for their merchandise, and some stuff may walk away. I don't do inventory. I don't pay attention to that. I choose to not live in that world of keeping track and keeping count. That's just not where I come from.
I love it. I love it. As I said, you're so true to it. I also loved your other remarks about kids, how you really involve them and encourage them, invite them to touch everything, that you're not at all protective about what's in your gallery.
No, I'm not. When people come in, the first thing I say to them is I welcome them to the gallery, and I let them know it's okay to touch absolutely everything, including the artwork. And in particular, I encourage the children to touch the artwork, because most of my work is really chunky and has tons of texture, and it really benefits from being touched.
Yeah.
And I jokingly say to people, hey, if it ends up in the Louvre, they'll figure out how to deal with the fingerprint, because to me, it's much more important that people have that tactile experience than I preserve this pristine piece of art. And anybody who buys one of my paintings knows that it's been touched. So, you know, if a fingerprint shows up later, so be it. But in 16 years of painting, I've never had anybody complain or bring a piece back because the fingerprint showed up later.
Right. Well, you know, honestly, I mean, that's the meaningfulness about it, right? I mean, it makes it even more original. So speaking of art, let's cut to your art making and talk about this beautiful piece that's behind you. I saw this the other day. It's really glorious, all the color. Any comments you want to make about this beautiful painting?
Well, this piece I started several years ago. It actually was in the opposite direction it is now. The top was the bottom was the top, and it was a completely different piece. Mm-hmm. Then at one point it was vertical rather than horizontal. And it started out as like 4 distinct quadrants of color. And now it's a sun or a moon rising or setting, I'm not sure which. Mm-hmm. And this piece, like most of my work, evolves over many different iterations, and I love to add layer upon layer. And I'm not someone who wants to have a warehouse full of paintings that I've done that haven't sold. So I tend to go over my paintings rather than start new pieces all the time. And what I love is that it really gives them a depth and a richness and character that they may not otherwise have.
I love it. So tell me, is it done?
You know, they're not done till they sell. There are a few pieces that I know are done, but I would say 90% of the work that I have will probably get worked on again at some point, just because if it's hanging around, like when I have extra blue left over on my palette, I will walk in from outside where I've been painting, and I'll literally walk into the gallery and say, like, okay, who wants some blue? Who needs some blue? And sometimes I completely change the character of a painting or turn it a different direction. And sometimes I just add a little mark to it.
A true artiste, Brenda. Let's talk more about your collage work. And we've got a couple of images. And this image that I'm showing right now, I mean, the tremendous color, the vertical nature of these collages. Talk to us about this one.
Well, I started painting acrylic on heavy watercolor paper at the beginning of the pandemic. And I did stacks of sheets of like color families. And I didn't know why I was doing them or what I was going to do with them, because I don't normally paint on paper. I normally paint on stretched canvas. So I had about this 10 or 11 inch tall stack of paper, and literally just started ripping it up one day and started thinking of doing collages. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking about the families at the border that were being separated. Mm-hmm. And just, you know, ripping these solid color pieces and textured and just tearing them apart and then recreating them with other unrelated colors or patterns really just made me think of what was going on at the border. So that really was the impetus for for this collage series. And then after doing it primarily pretty flat initially, then I started adding a lot of texture to it and decided that I really needed to frame these pieces, which is really the first time I ever framed any of my work. But because some of them were like 2 inches in relief, I needed some way to protect them so that when people purchased them, they wouldn't just really get destroyed on the way home.
And we have a black and white piece, which is very striking, very graphic.
And that's probably one of the first times that I've really used just black and white, and I found that I really enjoy it. I find that it's really strong, and that's one of my favorite pieces.
Yeah, it's a cool piece. Let's talk also about your clothing. We've got some wonderful images here. I know you've been focused on painting clothing for the last 3 to 4 years, and this one that we're looking at has this beautiful dress and scarf, and it's very organic, and the colors, the seafoam greens and blues, just beautiful.
Yeah, I've been doing the scarves for several years now and decided to start doing the clothing just a couple of years ago. And I either bring clothing back from Thailand, which I've been accumulating clothing and hats and bags for probably the last 8 years from Thailand. Really kind of feeling at some point that I would start painting them. And then I also get a lot of my clothing at vintage shops. And I just love I love the way that I do the process. A lot of people think that they're tie-dyed. People have asked me if they're batik. Well, if you know anything about batik, it's pretty clear that they're not batik. And even tie-dye is a process that takes a lot of time, a lot of steps. And I'm just not really that kind of process girl. I like to do stuff pretty quick and dirty, and, get a lot of pieces done at once. And it's nice because you never really know what you're going to get. And it's a lot of serendipity, but people definitely are loving the clothing and the scarves.
Well, your clothing, I have to say, it's just so soft too. Your fabrics are just so soft. Are you purchasing these pieces, you say, in Thailand? Are they from Bangkok, or do you go up country, or what's your story behind the actual acquisition?
I spend most of my time in Thailand, up north in Chiang Mai, which is where most of the handicrafts are made. Yep. It's the part of Thailand that I enjoy the most, unless I'm down south on the islands, which are also wonderful. I have done some buying in Bangkok, but the markets there are really hot and really mobbed and just kind of challenging. So I prefer to be up north in the hills where it's cooler and really dealing with the people directly that are making the items.
Yeah, I love it. So I have to ask you, I spent my high school years in Thailand, as you know, in Bangkok. Do you speak fluent Thai?
Nit Noi.
A little bit. Nit Noi too. All right, we've got another shot that I love that just, supports our conversation here. It's these beautiful scrumptious scarves. I can just kind of feel these. They're blowing in the wind, but beautiful scarves.
Yeah, I love doing the scarves. I do various sizes. I do small ones like 8 by 54 inches, and I'll go all the way up to 22 by 90 inches. Wow. So I have a lot of different lengths and widths, and I really like doing both ends of the scarves to be very different patterns. They'll be within the same color family, but I like the contrast of having different patterns on either end, and people just love them. I mean, they're so luxurious and so fun, and they're so practical. They're nice and warm, and you can scrunch them up into your purse if you go into a place that's air conditioned or you need something extra in the winter. And they're really practical, very useful, and easy to care for. You can wash them in anything. You don't need Woolite. Just wash them, hang them dry.
I love it. They're easy breezy. They're beautiful too. I really enjoyed the patterns and the colors. So Brenda, any advice that you want to share with us as we begin to wrap things up? Any closing remarks that are salient and pertinent to you?
Well, I would hope that anybody viewing this and anybody who comes in contact with me or my shop really appreciates that every single one of us being here matters. And that being present in the moment is the greatest gift we can give ourselves, and to really try to stay grounded and rooted into Mother Earth, and to not get carried away with fake drama and be mindful when fake drama is coming up, and just be grateful. There's always something to be grateful for, no matter what.
Oh, I love that. I think, that your emphasis on gratitude for me is really where it's at. And I'd love for you to share your URL so people can visit your website and your Facebook page.
Sure. It's imagineloveandpeace.com. And my Facebook page is just Brenda Malloy in Gloucester. I also have Imagine Gallery on Rocky Neck, but I don't tend to do as much with that one.
And you will be here, you'll have your gallery open until approximately November, December, before you hop down to Florida for the winter?
Definitely through Columbus Day, so mid-October. And then I live in my living space here till they turn the water off, which is usually the first week in November. So I start breaking the shop down probably the third week, because I have to raise everything up off the ground because we get flooding here sometimes.
Sure. Wow. It's New England, right? And you're right by the sea with that beautiful view. I want to encourage everybody to pop by Imagine. I mean, it's just such a treat, such a sensory experience. And Brenda, thank you so very much. I have a closing image that I want to share that is just so charming. The photographer here is Kathy Chapman. And it's of you welcoming everybody to Imagine. So I think that's a good note for us to close on. So thank you once again. You're really a treasure.
Okay. Thank you so much, Christine. I appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. And I want to thank Anders Johnson for doing his magic with making us all look good here on 1623 Studios, Cape Ann ARTWaves, and our sponsors. We honestly cannot do it without them. Thank you all.